Welcome to the world of the Transgo High Performance Shift Kit. In this video presentation, we'll show you step by step how to beef up your Turbo Hydromatic 4L80E transmission fast and easy with a Transgo Performance Shift Kit. You'll love it. This transmission is about to come alive. Video shows a typical installation with the trans still in the vehicle. It will help you install this kit with confidence. While you are watching this video, stop the tape often and read the instructions. This booklet has the specific instruction. Follow the booklet to the letter through the entire installation. During the installation, finish and review each step before moving on. When installing springs, follow the instruction sheet for customizing options, size, location, and color. When drilling holes, follow the instructions for their location, size, and customizing options. Follow the Shift Kit customizing options when they apply to this installation. Notice the If Trans is Apart page 9. If the trans is apart, these changes will improve durability. These are the typical tools needed to do the installation. First, let's road test the vehicle to see if the transmission is in good working condition. We just want to be sure it has 4 forward gears and reverse. Place the shift lever in the D or third position, not the OD position. Push the gas pedal to about 1/4 throttle. Feel the 1-2 and the 2-3 upshifts. Then at 45 to 50 miles an hour, move the lever to the overdrive position to feel 4th. This will tell us if the valve body is working normally. Then try some upshifts at 3/4 throttle to see if the clutches are in normal condition. They're holding okay. Let's get started. Release the hood latch. Let's raise the hood and remove the transmission dipstick. Okay, let's jack the front of the vehicle up like this. Place 2 stands, one here and one here. Now we can jack up the rear. When you're done, it should look like this. Please use sturdy jack stands. Before we go under the car, let's gather the required tools. We will need 8, 10, and 13 millimeter sockets, a speed handle, long screwdriver, small screwdrivers, drain pan, snap ring pliers, needle nose pliers, and some wiping rags. Let's make sure you have the transmission that this kit fits. Notice the pan is large, rectangular, rounded here in the back corners, and it has 17 pan bolts. Here on the driver's side, toward the rear, we have this large electrical connector and many wires going to it. Here's the line pressure tap and the shift linkage. This is the right transmission. Let's get going. Place a drain pan under the transmission, favoring toward the front. With a 10 millimeter socket and a speed wrench, remove all the oil pan bolts except for the one toward the rear, here. Then loosen the last bolt slowly and let the oil run over the front edge of the pan. Lower the pan. Look here in the pan. It has some debris, which is normal. This magnet is to collect any steel filings. This one is pretty clean. No problem here. The original factory pan gasket is a controlled compression type. If it looks like this and it is not damaged, reuse it. Let's lay the pan and gasket aside for now. Now let's get ready to remove the filter. Have the drain pan in position to catch the fluid that will run out of the filter and valve body. If the transmission oil is still hot, protect your hands with a rag. While pulling down slightly, twist left and right until the filter frees up enough to be removed. Place the filter in the transmission pan. Make sure the filter seal here is in good shape. Ours looks okay, so we'll reuse it. Make a simple drawing of the wiring and connectors so you will know how to reconnect them. With a speed handle, let's remove these 4 10mm bolts. First, remove these 2 bolts. And lay this plate aside. Now remove this bolt. And finally this one. These are the electrical terminal connectors that we will be removing. This is the 6 connector type. This is the 5 connector type. Let's start here at the force motor. Remove its connector here. Now the pulse width modulator solenoid connector. And if yours has a connector here, then remove it now. Most have been updated and will not have a temp sensor connector at this location. Remove this connector here at the manifold plate. Now we can remove these 2 solenoid connectors. A connector here and B connector here. Now let's tuck the wiring harness out of the way, like this. This pipe is held on with these 2 bolts and clamps. Remove this bolt. And finally this bolt. Now carefully pry the pipe from the case. Lay the pipe in the pan. Now we're ready to remove this detent spring by removing these 2 bolts here and here. Lay these parts in the pan. To remove the pressure switch, remove these 6 8mm bolts. Hold the switch with the other hand as you take out the last bolt. Be sure these 5 O-rings are still in place. If not, stick them in place with some Vaseline. Be sure the drain pan is still in place to catch the fluid that will drain from the valve body and transmission. Now remove the rest of the valve body bolts. except this one here. Loosen this last bolt 2 or 3 turns and let the valve body drain. Now remove the last bolt and lower the valve body. The separator plate will come down at this same time. There are 8 check balls and a screen above the plate. The screen should stay in place here in the case. If it doesn't, install it here in this passage. It's to keep the force motor and pulse width modulator solenoids clean from debris. Don't lose any of the check balls. Don't worry, we will show you where they go. Also, the instruction booklet on page 6 shows their location. Turn the assembly over and lay it in the pan so it can drain. Now remove the intermediate servo assembly from the case bore. Lay the servo pieces in the pan. Remove these 6 bolts from the reverse servo cover. And remove the cover. Remove this reverse servo assembly. Notice this is the inner piston and spring for the 1-2 accumulator assembly. Lay these parts in the pan. Find a pair of long nose snap ring pliers like these to remove this snap ring. It holds the pressure regulator and boost system in place. Be careful here. The parts above the snap ring are under some spring tension. Carefully push up and release a few times so the bushing will come down without sticking. Remove the snap ring. Then remove the boost bushing and valve, along with the pressure regulator spring and valve. Use a pair of needle nose pliers to remove the pressure regulator valve if it sticks in the bore. Put these pump parts in the pan. Now let's take the pan with the valve body and parts to the bench. Remove all the parts from the pan and organize them on the bench so you can find them as you need them. Clean your pan. We need to remove these 6 bolts from the accumulator housing to separate the accumulator from the valve body. Remove these 5 bolts first. And now have a buddy hold the accumulator while you unscrew this last bolt slowly. There is spring tension on this body. Set the accumulator housing and separator plate aside for now. Use a center punch and make a dink about 1/4 inch below the gasket surface into this passage between the X's. Like this. To find the correct drill, follow this chart. Use the 120 thousandths bit furnished and drill a pilot hole here between the X's through this partition left to right. Take the 3/16 drill bit and wrap some black electrical tape around the shank of the bit from here to here to protect the valve body as we drill. Now, enlarge the hole at this angle. It will look like this when you're finished. Good job. Before going, use one of the paper clips furnished and make a tool to help remove the accumulator valve. Find the nail furnished in the kit and use it to push this roll pin out, like this. Now, remove the plug the spring, and the valve. Lay these parts aside until we're finished drilling. Guard the original spring and plug. Lay out the new parts. Install the valve into the bore. Use the nail to push the valve to the bottom of the bore, like this. Install the small inner spring. Now install this outer spring. Next, install the O-ring onto the plug and lube it. Finally, install the plug and this roll pin. Remove the roll pin using the nail like this. Remove the manual valve and use a long pencil to push the plug and screen out of the end of the bore until you can grab them. Remove and discard the screen O-ring. Now clean and flush out the bore. Lube the new O-ring and install it onto the new inner tapered plug. Insert the plug into the bore and push it to the bottom with your finger like this. This screen needs to be in good shape. The screen is available at dealers and transmission shops around the country. Now, insert the spring into the screen and push them into the bore. Install the new end plug with the hole in it. Install the roll pin through the new plug like this. It'll look like this when you're done. Picture. Pay attention to the springs and where they go. If your accumulator has this valve and spring, install the spring first and then the valve. Lube this piston ring and install the piston with the original spring. Now lube this piston and install it into this bore. Install the white spring. Yes, we will discard this original third accumulator spring. Position this gasket on the accumulator housing. Now we are ready to bolt this housing back onto the valve body. Latest, we need to install the valve body gaskets, the separator plate, and accumulator body. Position this VB gasket onto the valve body. Temporarily place these Z bolts into these Z holes to align the plate and gasket to the valve body. Now oil this side of the separator plate. Remove these bolts. Now, install the TC gasket. Again, use the Z-bolts to align the gaskets and plate to the valve body. Lay the accumulator gasket on the valve body here. Install the white spring here and this accumulator original spring here. If your trans has this valve, then hold it into the accumulator board as you lay the accumulator housing onto the valve body. Notice this bolt is a long one. Install the bolts in a few turns. Make sure everything is aligned. Then tighten the housing bolts evenly. Use some Vaseline to hold the balls in place on the plate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7. No check ball goes here. Double check the instruction sheet for proper positions of the balls. Remove the 2 Z-bolts. Install the manual valve. Lay the valve body in the clean pan with the relief valve and pan bolts. Let's go to page 7 and look at the 2 different types of pressure regulator systems. Our vehicle has this Knoll stem type here, so we will be using this system. Lay the pressure regulator parts out on the bench. Discard this old pressure regulator spring and use this new green spring. Now discard this original damper spring and use the damper spring according to the instructions. Discard the boost valve and washer. Use these new parts here. Notice the wide lens on the new boost valve. The kit furnishes a new snap ring in case the old one gets damaged or lost. If yours looks like this, then do this. Lay the pressure regulator parts out on the bench. Discard this old pressure regulator spring and use this new green spring. And use the damper spring according to the instructions. Discard the boost valve and washer. Use these new parts here. Notice the wide lens on the new boost valve. The kit furnishes a new snap ring in case the old one gets damaged or lost. Lay these parts in the pan. We will install them in a few minutes. Let's go to step 2. The pin goes through the piston like this. Install the original spring onto this end of the pin against the piston. Now install the hollow sleeve onto the outboard end of the 1-2 servo pin. Lube the O-ring and lay this assembly in the pan. Go to step 3 of the instructions. Lay out the rear servo parts and replace this original spring with the new one from the kit. Lube these accumulator sealing rings and piston assembly. Insert this inner 1-2 accumulator piston into the larger outer piston. Install the new orange 1-2 accumulator spring. Lay this steel gasket on the cover and lay this assembly in the cover. Now they're ready for installation when we go back under the vehicle. Lay these parts in the pan. Take all these parts in the pan back to the vehicle. Clean all the gasket surfaces. Check to see that this filter is still in place. Let's install this low reverse servo assembly like the instruction sheet shows. Push this assembly into the bore. Install the gasket and cover by starting these bolts. Let's tighten them evenly. Turn to the top of page 7, step 1 of the instructions, and read about the pressure regulator system. Now let's go install these pressure regulator parts. Prepare for this job by locating a pair of snap ring pliers and a long screwdriver. Install this spring onto this end of the pressure regulator valve and push them up into the bore using your finger as a guide. Now, make sure the new boost valve is in the sleeve with the new washer and bumper spring. Install them into the bore. Push up with the long screwdriver and install the snap ring. If you just don't have enough hands, get a buddy to help you. Step 2 shows the proper assembly of the intermediate servo. The pin goes through the piston, then install the spring. Make sure this bushing spacer is on the pin as shown. Let's install this assembly now. Push it up into the bore. Have a buddy hold this piston and bushing in place with a thin, long screwdriver while you start this Z-bolt into the valve body. This dipstick stop bracket. Now let's remove these two bolts. And install the relief valve. Tighten all the valve body bolts evenly. Refer to our simple drawing and reconnect the solenoid and switch wires. Be sure to install these wire brackets. If necessary, remove any bolts that will let you install the brackets back into place, like your drawing shows. Looking good. Now double check each bolt for tightness. Let's look over everything carefully, then we will be ready for the filter. Check the filter in this area for any cracks. If it's okay, lube the seal and install the filter. Lay the gasket on the pan and push 2 bolts up through the pan and gasket. Lift the pan into place and start these 2 bolts. Finish installing all the rest of the bolts and then tighten them evenly. Looks good. Add 7 quarts of fluid and start the engine. Now immediately add 3 more quarts and check the dipstick for full. Look, it is still about a pint low. Let's add and recheck. There we go. It is still a little below full. After it warms up, we'll check it again. While the vehicle is still in the air, hold the brake and run through the gears from park to reverse, neutral, OD position, D, second, and now first. Let's move the selector to the OD position and accelerate, checking for upshifts. As it shifts, watch the speedometer change speeds. There's the 1-2 shift, the 2-3 shift, and finally the 3-4 shift. Okay, we can lower the vehicle. After the road test, you can check the fluid level again. Let's road test the vehicle and check its performance. Start with the throttle shifts, feel 2, the 2-3, and the 3-4 shift. This will tell us if the valve body is working normally. Do we have good, quick, crisp shifts with no delays? Now try some upshifts at 3/4 throttle to see how the shifts get firmer with throttle. One is okay. Let's go on. Yes, this transmission has come alive. This kit gives you the shift feel you want when you want it. Yes, with the gear command feature, you're in control, and it still delivers full automatic shifts in the drive position. It fits all these hard-working trucks. It gives each owner performance satisfaction with a vehicle that has longevity. We thank you for using Transgo products and look forward to serving you again with any of the other products you might want or need.